Hey there, folks. Thanks for joining us for the Cleveland Boat Show in 2026 for Get Hooked. The audio is kind of terrible, so I've done as much as I can to reduce the background noise, and hopefully you get something out of the show. Tomorrow we will be presenting at 6 p.m., and I'm going to try to have a different mic to give you a little bit better audio.
What is it? Panfish? Okay, got that. All right. So Nick, what we're going to do is myself is David, and that's Captain Nick, and we're here to talk about Get Hooked today. Now, let me ask you this: do you guys use apps today? Any of you? How many do you have? A lot. Okay, that's typical, right? So when we were developing this application, one of the big things that we saw was people have fishing apps that are paying $40, $50, $60 a year for these things. And they have 5, 6, 7 of these apps. You have another app, you have all kinds of things. He's got pages of apps, okay, that he uses. So we're going to talk about that in a second, so the product, okay? So I've been working in technology for many years, 45 plus years, okay? And so I've been fishing all my life, and I'm not Lake Erie kind of fisher. So when we moved here, I was on a boat, fished for 18 months, and I caught 2. So I didn't really know what I was doing wrong, and that's whenever I partnered on with Captain Nick, and he kind of showed me the ropes and figured out his experience, and he helped me catch the fish. And so before we started to partner with each other, I said, you know what, see if we can put this in an app and let's figure out what this looks like. We just started out very basic, right? And we looked at these apps that we have out there, and they show you various things. They show you the barometric pressure, they show you water temp, they show you these really nice overlays of the water with all the contours and everything. But just like you, sir, if we connected the dots between all these different applications, well, I use this app for the tides, and I use this app for the moon, and I use this app for the weather, and I use this app for the waves, and I use another app for this overlay, and so on. And the average person is sitting here going, okay, how do I connect all these dots between all these apps to know if it's a good day on Friday to go fishing in Lake Erie after I've got to drive 2 hours again, right? So this is kind of the problem that we saw in this landscape. There's bonets out there, there's on water, there's fish brain, there's fishing points, there's bass apps out there, but they don't answer these fundamental questions. Things like, is it worth driving 2 hours to go fishing? Right? Where did I crush it last time so that I can be successful when I go there again? Right? And what depth and speed if you're a troller, right? What depth and speed do we do? Right? Whenever we go out there to be successful. So a lot of these questions still linger. But again, these apps don't tell you this. Right? And this is something that we sat down and we deliberately looked at. And it started out very simple at first. Right? Then we started out very simple. And then we started out looking at this, and from my IT background, what I use when we develop applications is there's this pyramid of information, right? You start out with data and information. This is what the apps today give you, right? You want to know what the tides are, you want to know what high tide is, that's what they give you, right? What does that mean? Right? It doesn't really mean anything unless you actually apply some sort of knowledge, which is patterns and correlations, and then you get some wisdom. Should I go do this? Right? And when we apply this to Get Hooked, you start to get these kind of features like this. This is what we call the killer feature, right? So you'll see in the live demo where there's a bunch of points on that. Okay? And so that doesn't really tell you much. That just shows you where you went fishing last time. Right? That's the information part of the pyramid. Okay? When you start getting into these forecasts, what we call fishing forecasts, not weather forecasts, right? Other apps will show you weather forecasts and say, hey, it's going to be a nice day on Saturday, maybe you should go fishing. That's not what this is. example, you can set a fishing forecast on a specific waypoint at a specific place on the lake or river or Lake Erie or wherever you fish. You can also set a radius, half mile, 1 mile, 2 miles. These fishing forecasts are now tailored to that specific spot within that specific radius. And guess what? You can load these fishing points from your electronics. So you don't have to go back on it. You'll see in here that I have hundreds of waypoints in my meter. I load them down the lake garden and load them right into the phone app. And there's a dongle you can buy that lets you put your chip in it and it goes straight into the app. But then you create these fishing forecasts that allow you to tailor it. So let's say that you're fishing in one part of the lake and it's 20 feet deep. But then you're fishing in another part of the lake, so like you were saying about the panfish that might be more shallow. They're going to have two different fishing profiles, two different fishing forecasts. Right? So one's shallow and one's deep. Water temp's going to be different, that sort of thing. And if you've done this in the past, let's say you load all of your waypoints for the last couple of years, it actually goes back to our weather service and figures out what the weather was in the past on that day. Was it cloudy? What was the water temp? Okay, what was the air temperature? For that spot within that radius that you did 2 years ago. Right, so this is where we're applying the intelligence that other apps don't do. They'll just tell you you fished here 2 years ago. Right? That doesn't tell you anything. Right? The killer feature here is we apply all of that. Plus, if you look here on the right, and we'll show you this on the demo, it looks into the future and says, you know what, you caught all those panfish last year in that spot, in that radius. Those weather conditions, the same type of thing, is going to happen next Tuesday. Right? You'll get an alert on your phone or your watch telling you that. Right? That those conditions are coming up again. Right? So you'll see here, it also looks and says, well, when did you catch those fish? Remember, whenever you want those and you put them in, it records the date and the time. So it knows, did you catch them in the morning? Did you catch them in the evening? Did you catch them during midday? Right? So these are the types of intelligence things that we can add into this app that shows what your patterns are. Right? And we also tell you why. Right? Similar to 922, you caught 6 walleye. During that time, you're not using the basin and the lures that you put in. Right? So this right here is what we'll demonstrate for you today. We can look at. Now, one of the other things that we found from other fishing apps, they're basically Facebook fishing. Right? They're social. You share your fishing spots and you share your information with the community. Right? Who wants to give up their fishing spots? Right? Nobody. Right? If you're a tournament fisherman or a captain or somebody wanting to use this feature, you're not going to share that with anybody. Right? So one of the things that we built into this is there's no sharing. I don't even see it. Right? So whenever we built this app, your data stays your data. You don't share it with anybody. There's no sharing features inside this thing. And the data that you put in here, even we don't see it. That's it. Right? You load it into the app, it's yours, and we don't share it, or nobody shares it in any way. Okay. Now, I know we talked a little bit, well, probably more than a little bit about the lakes. We also have rivers in here. So one of the features we'll talk about on rivers is about steelhead fishing. Okay? So, have any of you guys done steelhead fishing at all? Yeah. So what's one of the things when you start putting in a fishing river with steelhead and you start walking upstream, what do you look for? The tributaries. We also show upstream tributaries on rivers, and if there's a dam up there, and how the water's controlled, and how far they are upstream. So when we show you the flow rate, we show you the precipitation for the last 30 set days or custom days, you can look at that. We show you water temperature and sensors support that. And we also show you turbidity. Now, say turbidity, everybody always asks me about this. It's terrible for turbidity. Most of these sensors don't support it, but if they do, you show it. Okay? But I'll tell you right now, out of the gate, turbidity is support for these sensors is pretty much terrible. Right out of the gate. Now, when we talk about the real world impact, this is one of the things that we also have into this app. The expectation starting from get-go. Well, let me just ask this. Do you guys get on the phone when you're fishing? Yeah? Yes? How much? Right? Okay. Or if you're out just pleasure fishing, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm sitting there and I'm not on my phone. Right? Recording details and doing stuff like that, not fishing. Okay? You can agree with that. It's like you're not out there fishing, right? The most I might do is if I'm trolling and I'm doing something, I might reach back on the electronics, hit one, and then I'm back to fishing. That's it. Almost every app that's out there on the market today assumes that you're sitting there on your phone recording everything that's going on. Okay? We don't do that. For me, I'm sitting on the couch at home going, okay, let me add a couple of things from today's trip to make sure that I'm able to capture what I did. And that's probably the most I'm going to do. Right? I'm not going to be on my phone fishing. So that's the real world impact about how we apply this build by fishermen for fishermen. Okay? Is that people that fish are sitting there on their phones. Okay? Now, the other thing is, I talked a little bit about this before, but is it worth the drive and where should I go and when? Right? This app is more about, and you'll see this in the demo a little bit. What's a good day to go? Right? Because you may say, well, I've got off Thursday and Friday and I'm going to go fishing this weekend. But what if both of those days are terrible where you want to go? What if the waves are too bad? What if the wind is in the wrong direction? Right? What if the flow rate on the river that you're walking to is going to be blown out? Right? This app will help you determine all that before you need to run. Right? So the real world aspects of this app is really going to help you for that planning and how to manage that. All right, you guys ready for the demo? All right, let me ask you this before I get into there. Any questions that you want me to cover on anything that I've said so far? Is there something in particular that's bugging you that you want to see? Anything? Yes, no? All right. Okay, good. Okay, this is the app. You see it up there? So the first thing I want to show you here is this. Might be a little bit hard to see it. But we preload a ton of data. Right? So things like buoys and boat ramps and marinas and harbors, all kinds of stuff. We even have fuel stations in here and we color code them so that you know if you can get marine fuel or diesel or regular gas. We have piers, kayak launches. We even have campgrounds. So if you're going to be traveling to a particular place and want to go to a campground, you can look those up here too. So if you use any kind of fishing apps, this is kind of what they show you, right? Not that we don't, and it's a bad thing, right? But they'll show you, okay, you loaded all your fishing spots here into the app. Take a look at all the points. But how do you actually make sense of this? Right? So what we do is we apply a heat map here. And if you don't understand what a heat map is, it looks something like this. Right? It tells you where your hotspots are from all of those individual data points on the app. Right? So if you're planning and you're saying, okay, this looks like a good hotspot out here, right? You can now use your measuring tool to say, well, if I'm coming out of Cedar Point to go over here. It's going to be a 3.5-mile run to get there. And then I'm going to do another 1.25-mile drift or troll across that hotspot. Right? So again, you're not just randomly going out there where you think you caught fish anymore. Okay? You're actually able to measure and plan and understand how to go out into this fishing area and be more productive. This changes the way that you fish on the lake. Now you can apply this to a river, you can apply this to a waterway, it doesn't matter, right? And it becomes much more planful in how you manage your fishing trips. So another feature that we have is buoys. So I'm going to show you Lake Erie here. These are all the buoys that we have for Lake Erie. We have about 3,400 buoys worldwide. Right? So if you're going out into a particular spot on Lake Erie and you want to know real-time data for that particular buoy, you can tap on it and it will load it and it will show you what that specific data actually is. Now, not all of them really do that. Let's see if we can get one that has data. If you've ever fished Lake Erie, you know this is kind of a problem. All their buoys don't have data. But it will show things like wave height, water temperature, air temperature, things like that. There you go. So right now, the speed's kind of gusty out there. And it's pretty light. You can see that some of these buoys different data. Alright, let's go down here. I want to show you waterways. Now, waterways, there's a couple of things here. One, it shows the rivers, right? So here's all the different data. You can see there's a lot of rivers and stuff here. But if you start to zoom in, right, you can see that it's showing the river data here. It also shows you the dams. That's what the orange circles are. So on the dams, or the waterways, you can see here it shows the basin water information, the flow rates, that doesn't show the flow data. You can see the precipitation for that point. If you want to look at it for the different time durations, you can do that. For the steelhead folks, this is where it shows you that it's controlled by a dam 3 miles up from that point. It also shows you all the tributaries upstream from that river. Now you can also get directions to that. You just tap that button and take it mouse or that mouse. That. Right, guys, got any questions? Let's go. Anything? Okay. Forecast. So I talked about this in the other slides. You can see here, like this one's for Allegheny River, it's going through the lakes. Obviously, I got a ton of test data that's not loaded in here, so you're seeing lakes from all the distance. Let's pick this one in Georgia. So you can see this one here. It's saying that the prior window based on the historical data is 6 to 9 a.m. And remember, I told you why. Why is this spot better time to go during this time period? The pressure stable, the wind is 10 miles an hour, and it's at 80. I'm not just showing you this data without meaning. And it also shows your historical patterns here, what you caught. Okay? You caught spotted bass and largemouth, and if you were trolling, it shows you what your trolling data was. Now, the other feature that we added here, we heard this from folks, is all these fishing forecasts because it takes a lot of time. So we actually used AI, where you see here at the top, it found 116 potential fishing spots where I caught a lot of fish in the past and was successful. And it can automatically generate those fishing forecasts for me. You don't have to put them all in. And if you're close to it, you know the same thing. I think there was a question about So we also do, various aspects of the weather forecast, right? We do the typical weather forecast. Remember I said about the 7 apps that people need, or 5 apps, or whatever it is? When we talk about weather forecast, it's not just the typical weather app and forecast. We tell you what the wind looks like, if there's waves, right? If you're close to a certain body of water, to tell you what that is. The pressure, the sunrise and sunset, right? Now, when you tap on one of these, it also shows you things like if there's certain wind gusts, if you have waves, which direction it's coming from, and wind, which direction it's coming from. So if you use apps like Windy or whatever, we've incorporated pretty much all of that type of data in here. You can also, in these weather forecasts, and I'll show you this in some other areas, you can actually save them offline. So if you're researching fishing areas to go, you can save these things for offline use. So that way, if you're out somewhere and you can save them, you can still see where you're better at. Like I said, you can look up different locations by using the search feature. Now, satellite view, right? So we have, under satellite view, you can see that we have different satellite images. Now, what does this mean? Well, when you're fishing certain bodies of water, specifically around some of the lakes or the coastal areas, you want to know where certain things are occurring. Water temperature, water clarity, is there a line, is there an algae bloom, or something like that. You can zoom in on these particular images, and you can see that on the image up there. And that's watching that. You can go over a little bit. You see the little wings? Okay. So right there, you can see that during on August 30th, this is where the historical weather comes in, right? This image was taken, it was 57.6 degrees out, not much rain. And look what it says 2 days prior. It's not just showing that thing, it's showing what happened a couple of days before that. And you can see what the humidity was, and wind, and so on. So this again, you can take a look at this and say, well, maybe I want to go fish that one night. Maybe I'm going to fish outside where the algae is, and you can figure out how tall that is using the net. So again, this is actually a separate app or a website that those people have. So yet again, we're incorporating that information into Get Hooked, so that you don't have to go to that website or go to that other place. Okay? So I got this question quite a bit ago. How do I get my information in again? You'll notice that when I go like this, I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to enter hundreds and hundreds of waypoints into this thing by myself. Right? So we have a GPS import. What's a GPS import? Well, if you have any kind of modern electronics, it allows you to export the data into a SD card. Right? You can then load that SD card's data into the app directly. And you can see here that we actually support, what's a little small, but like some of these are 120, 35, 35. Right? You can load as many of these in as you want. So if you have electronics on the front of your boat that has different data, electronics on the back of your boat that have different data, you can load them all into the app, and it will read all of that information in this panel map. Now the toggles here are, you don't have to display it all on the map, because can you imagine it showing 25, whatever your count is on the map all at once? It's just, it turns into an unput mess on the map, right? So we allow you to toggle those on and off. And some of the other features that we add here to help you control that is if you swing over here a little bit, you can actually assign different colors to the different pins. So whenever Nick and I was testing this, and we didn't do this, right? I would look his waypoints and I would look mine in there, and they all looked like the same thing, right? You couldn't tell his from mine. And so I would color mine one color, and he would color his another color, and you could actually see the difference in the pins. The other thing that we allow you to do is, I don't know about you, but when you're marking stuff on your electronics, you mark other things, right, other than catches. So you can see here, there's like boat ramps, I don't know, diamond yellow, I forget what I used that week, or a green flag. Like sometimes I'll mark like a commercial fishing flag out there on there. Well, I don't necessarily want to include that on my map in GetHook. So what you can do is you can come in here and toggle those off so that it won't show them. See, like this one, they have a restaurant. Now I may want to, include underwater grass, and some other things, right? Like anchor, we're anchored at the beach. I don't include those in the calculation either. So it'll take those off of your map so that they're not being shown on the app itself. So it only counts what you want it to count. So if you mark structure, you mark the crack, you mark the tree stump, or something like that where you're fishing, that definitely is something that it'll take into account. So you guys got any questions? I know we talked for a little bit. No? You don't have any questions, Nick? Well, see, he's cheating. He's cheating. He's got Nick back there answering all his questions. Okay. All right, I gotta call this out. Right? Why is there a compass at the top over there? Yeah. I'll tell you why. Because Nick asked for it. Yeah. Because Nick asked for it. He apparently doesn't know how to navigate on the lake, so he needed a compass on the app. No, it's actually a good thing because, like I said at the beginning, I've only been fishing on the lake for a couple of years, and I can tell you get turned around out there sometimes, and you start to think about things like when you come out of Cedar Point, for example, and you think that to go to Vermilion it's this way, like to your right, it's not. It's straight ahead. Okay, and so you get a little disoriented out there on the lake, thinking that Vermilion is right and it's actually straight. And see, right? And that happens wherever you're coming out of. You think that where a certain point on the lake is a certain direction. That's not right. Now, I'm not going to go any app, like I said, on fishing, but it does help you if you're sitting there to figure it out.
Well, there's gonna have to stop there.
All right, so I've talked for a little bit. Nick, would you want to add anything? All right. So here's a question.
Cousin had.
What's this thing here?
There's a guy, well, a guy retired.
That's next vitamin C fishing. What does that mean? Well, if you're a charter captain or if you're a breakfast place or something like that, and you would like to have your charter business or something prominently shown, just like this in the app, just let Nick or I know, and we can get you added in there. Right? So it'll show up just like it does on here with your logo, your information, and then whenever the user taps it, it'll show your information. They can call you, go to your website, get directions. It'll show all of their trip information and the different things that you feature. So if you're interested in that, just let one of us know. We'll get that done. Right? So I'm going to show you a little bit. If you guys don't have any other questions, I'm going to show you a couple other things here that we added. This one here, I've got into some Facebook groups from kayak groups. And early on, they were like, oh, you got to add this stuff for the waterways and the rivers. Okay? So what I showed you in that is primarily from the feedback we got from a lot of the rivers, right? The steelhead guys, the people who fish these kayak tournaments, things like that, they asked for those features. specifically, right? So that's why they're in there. Another segment of the population has to do with bass fishermen. So if you're fishing on Lake Erie for bass, now there's a couple times you can be like the smallmouth guys that go out and fish in different reefs and things like that on the lake. But you'll also see here, as I start to zoom in, these brown icons, and you start to see these are the piers, the marinas, the harbors, and also you get in there the docks for the different marinas, right? The bass fishermen will go in with their boats and their trolling motors, okay, and they'll just move around these docks, in and out of them, throwing underneath them, throwing them around the boats, things like that. And so we added this feature specifically for feedback from the bass fishermen who wanted to be able to see before they go where all of these are. Now, can you use that? Sure. A lot of them will go into like yet another app. What do they use? Google Maps, Apple Maps, some other map, right? Like Navionics or something like that. Well, if you're going into Navionics or one of these other fishing apps, you're paying for it, right? They're not free. Not to get it is free. But we combine all of this information into one app, right? So that you don't have to go and do this across multiple apps. Now, you'll notice that some of these are color-coded, right? So what that means is whenever you go in here, you can see that these marinas and some of the other aspects are color-coded. So let me go into the fuel stations. So if you're looking for gas, right, you can see here, there's different gas stations. All right, so you can start to see, we also show different gas stations, right? And these gas stations will tell you if they sell marine fuel, diesel fuel, or regular gas. So depending on what you're looking for, you can plot out these gas stations across the different points, either along your path, like if you're driving there, right? You can look up where you can pick up gas, or if you're out on the lake and you need to pull in somewhere and get gas, this will show you where those are at. Right? Now, if you go in and out of the same place all the time, you kind of know where they are. But if you're not, you're just driving up here for a particular weekend or a couple times a year, and you don't really know where the gas stations are on the lake or different places, this app will help you track them down and find out. Now, another thing we heard, and this is an interesting thing. I didn't hear this one from fishermen. Right? This came from family members, particularly the wives, right, of fishermen. Because what they do is, let's say that you're coming up to the lake for the weekend, and the guy's like, I'm going to go fishing. The wife's like, I don't want to go fishing. Right? So, in many cases, we heard that they come up, they find a campground, the person goes fishing for the day or for the weekend or whatever, and they're staying in a campground, they go do their thing, and then the family members, they go to the beaches or they do something else. Right? That's what this layer is for. If you're scoping it out to go to a particular place to go fishing, right, you can scope out where the campgrounds are in relation to the beaches so that the family has something to do on the summer, right? So whenever you're doing your trip planning, it also helps for you to do different things. Now, is this fishing intelligence? I don't know, probably not, right? But it makes your day a lot easier when you're able to plan some of this stuff about where you're going, right? And again, this is about not having to use all these different apps to figure out what you're going to do fishing. Right? Now, this one in particular, the campground base, not necessarily the beaches, but the campground beach came from folks on the Buckeye kayak trail. Right? Whenever they go and they do all these different kayak tournaments on the different lakes and rivers, they typically go there, go to a campground, pitch their tent, 3 fish, typically, and then they'll fish the tournament maybe the next day or the next 2 days, and then they come home. So knowing where these campgrounds are in relation to where they fish these tournaments was a big deal for them. And so when I say it came from the family members, that was more of the lake stuff. But for these kayak guys and gals that go out and fish these different tournaments all over the place, understanding where the campgrounds were in relation to where they need to fish was a bigger deal than I thought. Oh, it's hiding out. I'm talking too much. I think the screen. There we go. This last thing here that I'll apparently there's not a lot of rain. Yeah, not a lot of rain together. I think that's already passed us for a while, so it's not showing too much on their head. So when I showed the buoys kind of on the lake, but this gives you kind of the worldwide view of the buoys. And it's if you're like in a sailing type person or you're more coastal, that sort of thing, that's where this comes into play, but for not necessarily inland. You can actually click on one of these buoys and it'll tell you real-time information, whether it's Atlantic or Pacific. You can see it's pretty much all over the place. And you'll notice that vitamin C fishing is properly displayed no matter what zoom level the app is at. Right? So again, if you're a boat captain or somebody who want to get in on that, you can do the same thing. Just let us know. Great. I'm going to open it up for questions. Anybody have anything that you can want to ask? The alerts. Yeah. So there's a couple things that we have here. So you can enable notifications on this. And what does that mean? Well, we do a couple by default. You can turn this on and off and tell any notifications. So dangerous conditions, things like small craft advisories, stuff like that. We tap into the U.S. Weather Service, and it will send you notifications on your phone, on your watch, or whatever you have, and let you know what those conditions are. Right? It also says, now this is where we start getting into some things about the intelligence. Remember I talked about the fishing forecast? It checks those fishing forecasts within that radius and lets you know when the barometric pressure changes and it's falling over a period of time for that particular spot. Now, most apps will tell you the barometric pressure as a data point. What it doesn't do is tell you it's been falling for the last 3 days, and that's a good thing in that spot within a 2-mile radius. That's the part that these apps don't show you. They assume that you're going to go into their app all the time and keep eyeballing the barometric pressure and somehow remember that for the last 3 days that it was falling, so now it's a good time to go fishing. Those are the dots that I told you that you have to connect that all on your own, right? This app tracks that by you putting in those fishing forecasts, and it lets you know when that event is occurring. Okay? Now, the other thing that it lets you know is that you haven't done backup. Okay? So you're putting a lot of data into this app, right? And you don't want to lose it. Now, backing up your phone like iCloud or Google Drive or something like that, that's going to save it. But this app does allow you to do backups yourself. You can come in here and you can actually create a backup file that dumps it out into, wherever you want it. And so you can keep your data safe. And guess what? If you haven't done that in 7 days, it's going to send you a notification every day until you actually do it. Okay? Because we realize that you are putting data into here that you don't want to goes, and it will nudge you every day until you get back us. Right? Because we don't want you to lose that fishing intelligence that's going on. Now, one of the other features we have here is managing favorites. Now, you can have a favorite waterway, favorite boat ramp, favorite marina, and favorite fuel stations. Now, what does that mean? Well, when you have all of these data points in here, you may only want to keep a handful of them so that you don't have to keep jumping around to find them, right? This allows you to set those favorites. So what you can do is, let's say I come in here, and this, that's my nick, right? And there's a boat ramp right there. This little heart symbol up here in the top right, you can tap that, right? So I'm going to save that boat ramp, and then whenever I come out here and I go into manage favorites and boat ramps, you can see that I have a bunch of them already saved, right? And so that way I don't have to go hunt for these things whenever they're okay. Now the other thing that is about that, you'll see, you can't really see it too well. There's a little heart symbol in an actual boat ramp. So you can actually see on the map where all your favorites are without having to go into favorites. So you'll know just by a quick glance looking at that and understanding that. Now, back to notifications. Another thing that we heard from a lot of the river fishermen is they pay attention to the cubic feet per second flow rate. What was it again? I'll show you that in a second as soon as I get through the flow rate, right? So what I wanted to talk about on the notifications to finish that up is rivers, they look at the flow rates, how fast it's moving. Well, that's not just a fishing thing, that's a safety thing, right? You don't want to, some rivers, I'll just use one example, like the Vermilion River. If it's not under 250, you're not catching something. It's too fast. That thing is just, right? You go out in the river with your waders on, you're gonna be floating downstream, okay? But a 250 flow rate on, say, the Grand, not so much, right? That thing's down the churn, okay? Now, why is that important? So, if I want to know when the Vermilion is safe to go steelhead fishing, I can set a fishing forecast alerts to say, give me a notification on my phone when it's under 250 CFS. So now I know that it's safe to go fishing on that particular river. Right? You don't have to go figure it out, go into yet another app and figure out what that is. And I can tell you right now, I have an app on mine, or I used to have, called Cast. And there's a bunch of them out there where you can kind of do the same thing. But again, yet another app that I have to track in order to do the fishing that I want to do. All right, so now back to your question. Yeah, you can, one of the things that I didn't cover on here is you can, so not that I would do this necessarily, but you can actually just log tap on the app and it will bring up the main picture. So we actually talked about this. The answer is no, it's not in the app. Okay. Could we put it in the app? Yes. Right. So it was something that we deliberately didn't do initially, and we're waiting for folks to kind of tell us if that's that. Right. Yeah. So one of the things I didn't mention, we kind of almost went halfway there and then we're like, we stopped. Okay. So for the measuring tool, so there's the manual waypoint feature I was telling you about. So you can go in and you can put in all of your information, you know, in here if you want. You can even add photos, and you'll notice that it shows you the weather. So when things happen, things like that. I want to mention this real quick before I get to that feature. You can put in things in here like species, year, bait, depth, speed, stuff like that. If you just put in species and gear, one of the features that we put in here that we didn't want to do, I don't want to have to manage lists of gear, lists of stuff. And then someone goes, well, you include my dips documents. I don't want to deal with that, right? So what this does is, when you put in the information, it remembers what you put in. So it gives you a quick list of what you put in that's relevant for you. So even then, you're not navigating a bunch of data that someone else put in, right? You're navigating more data. Okay? Now, you'll notice that we put in depth, speed, line out. Okay? Those features are for the trawling use, specifically. So if you don't put that in, when you go to the fishing forecast, you won't see trolling specific information. But if you do put it in, now the intelligence and the learning models within the app says, oh, this guy's a troller. Let me provide that information so that they'll talk to them. Right? So it understands whether you're just a regular, cast fisherman, or whether you're a trolling versus both. Right? It knows which ones to put in there. You can also attach photos. Now, I said, you and your phone, right, while you're fishing. However, right, Nick and I went round and round this, and I was originally against it, okay, until I told him I was fishing with him for how long. He comes on my boat, he's like, that's not it. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, this is it, and he showed me the one that was it, versus the one I was using, okay? I don't know about you, but keeping track of all these different colors and lures and blades and spinners, whatever, right? It's almost an impossible thing, right? You probably got a whole container, or bucket, or box of all the different spoons and trying to remember what's monkey puke and alewife and bloody nose and broken nose, right? It becomes impossible to figure out. So we eventually added this feature, not because we want you to take pictures on the boat of fish, which you can do, okay? But to take pictures of what you're using to catch those fish so that you can remember a year from now what you used to catch that fish in that spot at that point in time, right? So I'm not saying don't add pictures of fish or whatever, but the intent behind this is that you can take photos of the gear that you use. And then if you got to think about it, a lot of the stuff that people use, it's custom, right? You don't have to memorize that pattern, a year from now when you caught those fish. So you can do that. All right, any other questions? So the question is, how much information do you put in here? And what does the app actually do? And how it works? I'll say this. We provide some basic intelligence in here by default. Right? We have to. Because people who download this initially don't have it. Right? So we have to be able to provide certain weather forecasts and weather histories and things like that out of the box. Because otherwise it's not going to be any value to anybody, right? So some of that comes out of the box by default. Now, as you start putting this stuff in on your couch, like I said earlier, okay, it starts to understand, oh, he caught a walleye over here using this particular bait at this date and time, when the waves were this, when the temperature was that, right? So the more you put in, the smarter it does get, right? This is when you're talking about AI and learning models, I can look technical here, but bear with me for a second. When you're talking about these types of things, it does take a little bit to get it to understand what kind of fisherman you are. Right? You fish in the morning, you fish in the evening, you do that sort of thing. Right? So one of the features that we included in here, right, and this is, I think it's more of a fun thing, but it actually answers your question a little bit right on. What kind of fisherman are you? Really? All right. So what we do is, you can see from this one because I'm loading in my, some of the Lake Erie walleye stuff. Right. How far do we travel? What kind of fish do we typically catch? And it actually calculates your fishing personality. What kind of fisherman? Right? Are you the dawn patrol? Are you a night owl? Do you fish more at night? Do you fish during the day? Do you travel a lot? Right? What kind of conditions do you fish in? Well, I'm not out there fishing in the pouring rain. I'll tell you that right now. Okay. So this one's figured out that I'm fairly a pretty good fair weather fisherman. Right? I'm a true opportunistic. Whatever's biting, I'm after it. Right? So if I'm out there fishing, I'm fishing for whatever's biting. Right? So this helps you with that question, right? What kind of fisherman are you? And a lot of people will fish fishing spots because they like going there, not necessarily because they're successful. So as part of the intelligence factor of this app, once you put more information into it, it will help you understand what kind of fisherman you really are. Right? And you stop fishing those spots nostalgically, and you start fishing them to catch fish and eat more of them. And I can tell you this from personal experience. Like when I lived in New England, I would go fishing with friends, and they would show me their fishing spot, honey hole kind of thing. But they were like, "Oh yeah, we got to go to this lake because I did this." Not because we didn't caught fish. We like going to that lake, right? Very different things. If you're going to catch fish, this app is designed to help you do that. If you're just going there to kayak around and do something fun, not the app for you. Okay? Because it's not going to tell you that that's a fun place to go. Right? It's going to tell you where you were productive to catch fish. Got a couple minutes left. Any parting questions or comments? That's it. Yeah, I mentioned backups a couple minutes ago. So you will get nagged this year. If you haven't done backups in 7 days, get a nag for everything. All right. And once you go back up, then you have another 7 days, and then you'll start tagging again. I do that on purpose because I don't want a support call saying, "Oh, I didn't back up my data." You didn't see the notification that I nagged you every day for 7 days, for a month, telling you to back up your data, right? Again, most apps don't really do that, but this one will do that because you realize the importance of maintaining your data and your consistency. So one of the questions that came up yesterday was this: can I use this to back up information from multiple electronics inputs? Yeah. I showed you earlier that you can load GPX files from multiple units. Right? So if you have, some people have some on the front of the boat, on the back of the boat, or two in one place, or whatever, and you pull the chips out, you load all that data from all those electronics, even from one boat or multiple boats. You can load that into the app, and what will happen is you can then create a backup of all of that data in place. Right? Yeah, I talked about that in the PowerPoint slides, but I'll just reiterate it here. Okay? This app is not built from ground up to be social app. Not at all. All right. it doesn't share your data. You can't share your data with other people. You can't. Right? On purpose. Right? This is not a social network app. Right? It's your data that you load with your personal intelligence. We don't even see it. So this is why when we're doing backups, you have to back up your data. Right? Could I include cloud backup? Sure. It's not a problem. Right? But then I have to explain to Apple and Google and everybody else why I'm having to look at your data. And then I got to explain to you guys why we're having to back up your data. Right? And it opens up the door. Well, if you can back up your data to my servers, right? What are you looking at? Right? We don't even open that door. Right? And that's why I nag you every 7 days to back up your data. Okay? Because even we don't see it. Right? And we don't provide a feature to share your data at all. Right? Nobody wants to give up their fishing spots or honey holes or nothing like that. Right? So, yeah, this is not a social app whatsoever. Yeah, so backing up isn't just one way. So it creates basically it's called a zip file of all your data, all your photos, all your metadata. That's it. And in fact, that's what I do to test this. I created a lot of test data as separate backups. And then I would just load in, if I'm going to test Lake Erie, I load in that backup. If I'm going to test coastal, I load in that backup. Right? And so I can test all these different things by just loading in different backups. Yeah. Yeah. If you want to do the same thing that I did, like you can have all your Lake Erie data, make a backup. Do all your coastal data, make a backup. If you're going to Lake Erie, load in that backup and see all that. And then when you're on the coast again, load in that data. Right? And it won't show the Lake Erie stuff. Right? So you can manage your data however you want in that way. But that's why I nag it. Right? Because if I have an automatic cloud backup, then it opens the door of who's seeing my data when. All right, so we got about 3 minutes left. Any party questions? Otherwise, my name is David. This is Captain Nick, Vitamin C Fishing, and the app is Get Hooked. And I'll just do the call to action here. The last couple of slides on the deck before we wrap this up. So why are we different? Right? Let me just wrap this up. We provide personal AI forecasts. Right? The other apps don't do this. Not even close. Hopefully you got that sense whenever I'm showing you all the intelligence built into this thing. That's not what other apps do. It learns your patterns, not everybody else's, yours. Okay? We have a lot of different layers that you can add in here. Buoys, ramps, marinas, fuel stations, all kinds of stuff. Right? It provides real-time river flows and buoy information. Right? It shows you what the watershed is. Right? Real-time upstream influences for different rivers, lakes, and dams. Right? Other apps may show you this information, but they won't tell you why that's important. Right? It's private by default, like I just talked about. Right? We don't look at any of your stuff. And more importantly, a lot of the apps out there, most of the big companies that run these apps don't even fish. They just saw an opportunity to provide mapping software for data for fishing people, and it's not built by anglers or anglers. That's really one of the big differences for us. It's currently available in the Apple App Store. It's been there for probably what?
So we're wrapping up the boat show presentation for day 2. We had a pretty good crowd for this day. The first day we had maybe 10 people, and that was over the course of an hour. And today we had, you can see, quite a bit more. So that was a good showing. The weather was better. We only had one mic, so we definitely got to get Nick more involved tomorrow. The other stage has 2 mics. We'll get some better video, we'll get some better audio, and we'll post that whenever we finish up. Thanks for joining us. See you on the next one.